Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Real Talk, where we interview people who have and continue to overcome adversity. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Maggie Augustyn. Dr. Augustyn is a practicing general dentist, practice owner, and author. She has had the distinguished honor of being voted America's Best Dentist and America's Top Dentist based on her superior experience, continuing education, and commitment to excellence. She completed her formal dental education, earning a Doctor of Dental Surgery from the University of Illinois at Chicago. Prior to that, she was awarded 2 bachelor's degrees, one from UIC and Benedictine University. Benedictine awarded her the Rising Star Award for making considerable strides in her career and her demonstrated dedication to philanthropic endeavors. Dr. Augustyn has a strong social media presence in dental circles and has an average of 20 publications per year in journals such as Dentistry Today and Dental Economics. She is a frequent contributor to Dental Entrepreneur Woman and has been featured on various podcasts bringing attention to wellness, the importance of authenticity, and burnout in dentistry. She is also a mentor to a long list of young dentists and is a motivational speaker around the country. What I appreciate most about Dr. Maggie is her commitment to helping people reframe their challenges and believe in the possibility of a brighter future. And I'm honored to share her with you today. Dr. Maggie, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's been a wonderful morning.
Has it? That's wonderful. I wish I could say the same. My next door neighbor has some car that is super loud, like has those like special like mufflers on it that are like really loud. It's like a racing car. And he decided to drive that this morning. And oh my gosh, it woke me up at about 5 a.m. So about an hour before I was ready to get up. But
That there's nothing worse than getting up even 10 minutes before you have set your day. It almost feels like that 10 minutes is the most important part of that sleep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so important. But I'm excited for everyone to hear your story and learn from you because I feel like you have so much to give the world. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey prior to becoming a dentist and what life has been like leading up to that?
I have a fruitful journey. I was born and raised in Poland. And I was born in the 70s. And in 1980, my dad, who was a scientist at the time, who had gotten his PhD, received some sort of a fellowship or a grant to work in the United States. So we came to the United States from 1980 to 1982, and then went back to Poland, lived under the Iron Curtain. And I remember in 1989 was the first free election in Poland. And in 1990 is when we immigrated back to the United States. And even though it was potentially going to only be a 2-year stay, it ended up being my lifetime. So I've been in this country since 1990 for over 30 years. And came when I was 14 at a very impressionable, vulnerable age. Very, very difficult transition. I had an interview earlier this week with a student that's doing an assignment on immigrants. And so she asked me some things about what it was like in those times. And it was actually really difficult for me to, one, remember what it was like, because I would rather not. And it was very traumatic to think about uprooting everything that you know, everything that you have, and moving it across the seas to a place you'd never been. The glitz and glamour of walking into a store with shelves filled with food and shoes and clothes was not like something I was used to. And being provided, so like, I don't know, each one of us, there's 4 of us, my parents and my sister and I. My sister and I were probably given an 1/8 of a suitcase, right, to fit everything that mattered into. And it was a difficult transition. That is a true understatement. And moving to Ohio, which was a not very diverse area, was also very difficult for immigrants. It's very different in Chicago, where I live now.
Mm-hmm.
The globalized community, and today too, life is really different. We've opened our eyes to diversity a lot more than we had back then, at least in certain aspects. And so even breaking through to creating friendships with a lack of ability to communicate, again, was something I'd never want to think about.
What was your mindset during that period of time? You talked about it being a difficult transition to go from where you were to coming here. And then obviously there was some challenges with like there not being much diversity, but then there was also walking into a store, like you mentioned, with shelves of just food and the options and things of that nature. What do you remember about that time in terms of just how you felt about life on a daily basis?
Alone. My parents had their own difficulties and struggles at the time. My mom had left everything she knew. My dad was working tirelessly to try and give us a better life. And it was a different time too, also the way that parenting worked. But I just remember feeling alone and invisible. I just kind of put one foot in front of the other as best as I knew how. I would have preferred to be numb than going through some of the things that were, roaming around in my head. It was impossible to, I mean, clearly it's created resilience, right?
Yeah.
And perhaps that was a fair price to pay. But having said that, I would not want my child to ever pay that price.
Yeah. How long did you feel alone?
For at least 2 years. In 1992, we went back to Poland to visit family. And, it was difficult because you remembered all the good of being a part of a community and being loved and participating and talking and laughing. But when I came back, I believe I was a sophomore in high school and things started to take off a little bit. I created a small group of friends. And beginning of, I think, my sophomore year, I managed to get a date to homecoming, kind of like a blind date. And then things got better.
I guess what's your advice to someone who's in that place in terms of like maybe they are an immigrant and maybe they don't necessarily speak the language? Is it like trying to break through to get and create friendships as soon as possible, or what's the advice or the strategy or what people should be thinking about if they're in that place? Because it could be obviously like that person that's an immigrant that's stepping into a new community, but it could also be someone who's not, someone who's well known, who feels alone, right? Someone who is afraid to show who they really are. So what's your advice?
I think anytime you change your circumstances and you go from something that is known to something that is unknown, and the bigger the difference between the known and the unknown, the harder it is.
Yeah.
In the end, 100%, the thing for me to remember is that it was worth it. And as much as I say that I wouldn't want my daughter to go through that trauma, looking back, I would be willing to go back through that to end up in the place and the person that I am. Creating relationships. And, it could be very difficult for people. It was for me, stepping outside of your comfort zone to find a community, to find belonging, to find that you matter, I think is the best way to heal and break through that. And in all honesty, all you need is one person, right? To make you feel like you matter, to make you feel like your existence is noticed, to make you feel like tomorrow is worth waking up for. You just need one person to help you, remember that. I think that is a great solution for, the lack of esteem that you might hold for yourself in trying to break through a new environment.
There's a book out there called The One Thing, right? And the one thing is like, what's the one thing?
I love that book. Yes.
It's wonderful. Yes. It's wonderful. But I also felt something different with what you just said. You said there's one person. It could be one person, right? Not one thing. It could be one person.
It could be one person. It could look, I don't know if you know this story. This is a fairly popular story. Okay. So I read a lot about depression, suicidality, things like that. So there's a person, and he left this in the suicide note. He was walking in the Golden Gate Bridge, and he's walking to the place that he's about to jump off to commit suicide. And he tells himself, if there is one person that will look at me and smile, and there could be hundreds of people walking up and down that bridge. If there's one person that will look at me and smile, I will not jump off. And he jumped, and he's gone, but he left that note. So it may not even be a person. It may even be an action.
How is that tied to the story that you talk about with the place that you were at in your profession and how you felt about working with clients, and then finding a person that helped you turn all of that around?
When you're in a place that you struggle, sometimes there's reasons for that. I mean, clearly being transplanted into a new environment and being alone has something to do with it. But you could be within the place that you're at today, and you could be struggling, and you could be surrounded by people that you love and that love you. And yet, I mean, there's something to be said about feeling alone in a crowd, right? And mental illness, a real true symptom of, at least for me, of depression is feeling alone despite being surrounded by people. And part of the reason, at least for me, why I struggled in my profession, why I struggled throughout life, but especially most recently, is the fact that I was not living out what was in my heart and what was in my mind. Along the way, I was taught to be a certain person, to act a certain way, right? As a result of who I became. So for example, I'm a dentist. And for years I had been taught that a dentist, a doctor, a healer, a provider should be a certain way, right? You have to be stoic, you have to be professional, you have to use medical terms. And whatever it was that was taught to me and who I was supposed to be was not congruent to what was in my heart and what was in my mind. I was living an inauthentic life. I was living a life that I thought I was supposed to be living, that had nothing to do with what brought me joy. And so in 2018, probably the worst year of my life, I'd broken my leg. I was in this awful depression. I suffered from medication-induced restlessness that got me to a point where every day I wanted to stop living because I could not deal with the restlessness. At the end of that year, I found out I had cancer. And after the treatment of cancer, when I woke up on the other side, I realized I didn't want to go back to that life. There's just no point. If I was going to go back to that life, cancer, you might as well have taken me, because it just wasn't worth it. And I started searching, and I started meeting people that allowed me to connect with what I felt was important and worth living for. And that's when I slowly began living out who it was that brought me joy, that made me like, there was no struggle anymore. There was no pushing. I mean, life wasn't heavy anymore when I realized that I was someone different. And so when I started to experience that, when I started to embrace who I was and what was important to me, and living that out every day, suppressing all these other things that I'd been taught, life became lighter, life became joyful. I came to a place where I was willing to grow, where I wanted to grow, where I wanted to change. And all of that was absent years prior. So even if you are, like I said, you could be struggling. You could be in a place where you're just like, what is the point of all this? Why am I waking up in the morning? Every day is the same, and none of it brings me joy. I'm not in flow. Well, maybe you're not living who it is that you're in your heart. And it takes a moment, and it takes time, and it takes research, and it takes guidance to come out of the place where you are unauthentically you, to getting to a place where okay, I can do this. I can do this forever. I want to wake up at maybe not 5 o'clock in the morning, right? But I want to wake up every day at 6 in the morning. I am ready to go. And I want to experience everything. It opens up your eyes to all the things that you weren't seeing before. Like, even if it is nature, and for me, it is nature, right? The beauty of life is refreshed and re-energized. You are re-energized.
You talk a lot about things that people often try to hide. Why do you talk about that?
Because as a self-pronounced mess, I am really tired of hiding. And when I was hiding, when I am hiding, when we are hiding, we're pretending, right? There's a study, it's a very sad, there's an article that came out in Psychology Today, which actually is really sad, which talked about authenticity. And it is really profound, because it stated that we feel most authentic when we are fulfilling the expectations of our neighbors. How sad is that, right? I feel the most like myself when what you think of me comes to fruition. It's just so sad. I feel authentic when, whatever it is that you want for me, I attain, instead of what it is in my heart comes. So for many years, even whether it was because of my depression or the fact that I was a transplant for those years, I felt invisible and alone and not relevant, not important. And there was a moment in time when some of that got muddled. And for a moment, I felt like I existed and like I mattered. And my dad, who, as I mentioned, was a scientist, kept relations with a lot of other scientists in the Western world on the other side of the Iron Curtain. And one of his colleagues from West Germany had come to visit. And he had brought presents for my sister and I. And he had brought a Snickers bar and a Milky Way. And my sister ate the Milky Way instantly, immediately. And I held on to my Snickers bar, which was deep in the back of the drawer of my desk, until it molded. I probably held on to that Snickers bar until we immigrated to the United States, because that Snickers bar meant that there was someone out there in the universe that I did not know cared about me enough to bring me something that didn't exist in Poland. And that was very powerful for me. And that's part of why I talk about some of the things that I talk about. Is I could be out there in the universe never knowing you and never coming into contact with you, but because of everything that I have gone through, and possibly some of the things that you are going through, the energy of the universe creates itself in a way that I am there caring for you, and I see you, right? The way that man saw me.
Wow, that is really powerful. How do you keep going past the most difficult moments?
It's a choice, right? When you are in those moments, you make a choice to get through it, no matter the cost. You remember that these moments are not permanent. There's a saying that says, if you're in hell, just keep going. And it's like a circle. And then because you're going to walk out of it. Right. And it's also important to remember the times that you have proof in your life that there have been other difficult moments and you have gotten through those. Okay. You gotta stick that in there. So it's a choice. It's not permanent. I have gotten through difficult moments before. I am in that season once again, where I am going through a lot of difficult moments. And in my conversation with Lonnie Gross, who you've had on your podcast, something that she said to me this week, which I'd never heard anybody say, none of my mental health care providers, she said, you are choosing the dark thoughts. And as you're choosing the dark thoughts, you are leaving out all these other thoughts that make you beautiful and that make you relevant and that make you good. So if you are only choosing to focus on the dark thoughts,
Mm.
be fair in allowing the light to change those, to change that reality. These days, I do use visualization and meditation. But I think also what's really important, and we touched on that earlier in the conversation, is people. There's a bracelet that I just bought for myself that says, "Love me until I am me again." And for me, it's my husband. We've been together for more than 20 years, and he saved me. He saved me from myself. He is that one. I am very, very lucky to have that, and I fight it because I want to get through it alone, and I don't want to be a burden, and I don't want to scare him. The people that you surround yourself with, sometimes you have friends, and sometimes there's seasons where you don't. I've been through those. And there are moments that it's difficult to reach out to people when you're at your lowest, right? And for a lot of us, it's really simple. It's my kid.
Yeah. You mentioned what Lonnie said about choosing the dark thoughts. Why do you think we go there? Why do we get so focused on the things that are not going well, or just things about ourselves that we don't necessarily appreciate, and forget all of the other aspects of ourselves that make us beautiful?
I feel like I can talk on just this alone for like 3 hours, but when evolution has taught us to look for danger, right? So when we were cavemen and cave women, we were constantly on the lookout of our threats, what was going to kill us, what was going, the food that the pet, we were always on the lookout of what was threatening our existence. We taught ourselves in evolution to look for the negative. Even today, if you think about it, when you have a kid that struggles, so my kid is great verbally and struggles in math. Okay. My initial thought was, well, shoot, I got to get her a tutor for math. She's got to get through her weaknesses. She's got to, but why am I not encouraging growth in her strengths? We do that all the time. If your kid is getting C's and A's in English, you're not going to get a tutor for English because she's fine in that. We're just going to focus on our weaknesses. So I think evolution has a lot to do with why we focus on that which is negative. I think we're addicted to that thinking also. I think we are addicted to bringing ourselves down. I don't know where it comes from. I haven't figured that out yet, but we just tend to focus on what is negative. We've never been taught to change that thought pattern. Even when we talk to one another, how are things going? Sometimes we're just programmed to talk about the negative things, right? Because if I talk to you about the positive things and you are not in a good place, I don't want to make you feel bad. I don't want to make it seem like I'm bragging, right? So how is it going? Well, work is really hard and it's challenging and we don't have enough, I'm going to talk about things like that instead of saying, you know what, it's been an incredible day. My daughter did really well. We're just, our culture does not allow for some of that. For me, for some reason, I have had dark thoughts my entire life, and I find comfort in them. It's like a warm blanket. It's a destructive, warm blanket. And it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of change, and it takes a lot of recognizing those thought patterns to change those around. There's a book that I'm reading called You Are the Placebo, which talks about your ability to change your thought. But before you do that, before one, you have to recognize that you're doing it. And two, you have to find the will and the desire to change it. You have to get to that place. And if you're too burnt out and too stressed, the last thing you want to do is to work on improving yourself, because you're trying to put one foot in front of the other. So there's challenges on all kinds of levels in terms of why we over focus on these negative thoughts and comparing and things like that. I mean, why do we compare ourselves to people that are better than us? Right? Why don't we think there are people in India that don't have enough to eat, and I can go to the store and pick anything I want, basically, and feed myself? Why?
How do you get yourself in a place to where you want to grow and you want to change?
I enjoy it. I enjoy the change. It's like a project, almost. It's like a lifelong project. And so I don't have a green thumb, okay, but I would imagine it is a lot like putting a seed and watching a beautiful plant grow. I enjoy the process of growth, even though it's uncomfortable. I don't know if I just was born with, having a growth mindset. I do think that certain people are born with a growth mindset. In others, you have to inspire it.
Yeah.
You have to, kind of water it. But I like to see that every day I'm less of a mess. I'm a more organized mess, right? And the more I change within myself, the more I see I want to change. And by changing and being a better person, you could see that whatever change you create in yourself, you can seed in others around you to inspire change within them too. I do a couple of lectures and I show people the difference between who I was 2 years ago and who I am today. And having changed myself, even though it's been a difficult journey, and yes, I have enjoyed the process, it inspires people, and it lets them know that change is possible.
Yeah.
Right. So you're kind of an inborn leader in that thought.
Yeah. When you talk about that, like who you were, and you talk about these presentations and things that you give to people, if you were to compare like today versus 2 years ago, what are some of the things that you're doing differently now that you were not doing 2 years ago that you're most proud of?
2 years ago, I thought, because nobody told me otherwise, that life was supposed to be hard and difficult and heavy. I just thought that was part of life. This is what we were dealt with, and this is what we, the other part of it is that I thought life coaches were for suckers, right? And so let me explain that. I thought, because this is old way of thinking too, this is like 10, 15 years ago. I thought life coaches were for people that could not get their life together, that had no direction, that maybe didn't, graduate, like they just could not organize themselves in a life where they became a success, right? That's what I thought life coaches were. A life coach is going to sit down with you and say, you're going to go to college, you're going to take these courses. I did not know that life coaches could create and inspire a change in your mind. In your mindset, I had no idea that a life coach can allow me to search within myself to find where the joy was suppressed. And I was too cheap to ever consider having a life coach, right? I'm like, no, this is not going to happen. I got through dental school. I bought a home. I have my own practice. I have a good, successful life. There's no way I need a life coach to tell me how to live. I just don't know why I'm not happy. And so it was, I ended up meeting with someone that I met off of Facebook that was also part of the profession. And she said, I think you would really connect with this woman. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to do this because I have to be nice to these people, right? And make them feel like their advice is relevant. So I called who is now my life coach, Lonnie Grass, who I've been working with for over 2 years. And within an hour's worth of conversation, the energy that was missing in my life that made me feel loved, even though I was surrounded by people that loved me. Okay. I have to make that clear. I am surrounded and supported by people that love me. There was some part of energy that was missing within my soul. Within 1 hour, I felt like I found something that I have been looking for a very long time. And she made me feel safe. She made me feel safe to talk, to grow, to be held accountable and to be brave enough to discover what it was that wasn't making me happy. And that was a lot. And so in creating this change over the last 2 years, I don't know that it would have been possible for me without having an accountability partner, right? I think you can do it. I think you can do it with reading and processing and maybe journaling and meditating. I think you can do it. But I think the change, and it depends on the person too, right? I think for me, if I didn't have that accountability partner, it would have taken much longer. So I feel like I took a shortcut.
And the shortcut is in the one person.
Yes. Once again, it's a person. We are all connected and we need to feel loved, right? Look, everything that's happening in the world with us going on fast forward, with us being stuck to our phones, with us being stuck to our screens, we are losing the human element because it feels easy. Like you just think like, my kid is not there yet, but the kids on the phones and, talking to one another and texting and Snapchatting, that is not a replacement for human contact, for eye contact, for touching somebody's arm, for a hug. The further we get away from human contact and human relationships, the quicker we're going to get to burnout and to losing flow. We need one another more than we would like to admit.
Yeah. Is there anything that helps you recognize when you're getting off track that you recognize as a way to get back? And that may be like daily habits or thoughts or feelings or foods that you start to crave, or like, how do you recognize when, it's kind of like that, the guard, like the little bumps in the road, when you're driving.
I love the food thing because there's days that I want to come home and have a donut, and I feel like a donut fixes everything until you've eaten the donut and realize that it fixed nothing. Now you're just feeling guilty for having eaten the donut. For me, I don't know how many people know what it means to be in flow. To be in flow means that basically time doesn't exist and you are stuck in something, stuck in a good way. You are present in the moment. Time doesn't exist. And you're just joyful and you can feel like you can be in that moment forever. That's what being in flow means. So I look for moments of flow in my life all the time. And I find myself in flow very frequently. When I go through days when flow isn't present, when I haven't lost time doing something, then I know that something is off, right? And for me, as a person that suffers from mental illness, sometimes it does require medicine.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's people, connection. For me, getting myself past that cycle very often requires crying. For other people, it may be exercising, creating, drawing, painting, what have you. But really, when you're in a moment where you just don't want to keep going, you don't want to see anybody, if you allow yourself to step outside of that difficult moment, I promise you, if you take this advice, it will help. If you force yourself to be with someone else, another person, a community of people that you genuinely like and enjoy being around, it's going to fix some of that. Being around people is actually very good for both burnout and depression, no matter, and it is really, really hard to get there. Picking up a phone and calling a friend can be very healing, even if that's the last thing that you want to do. But if you do it, you will not regret it. It will change things. So I have recently started to meditate, and I have taught myself that there's this place, I don't know how to describe it. It's like behind my eyes in the front, dark. Okay. That's how I can describe it. And if I put myself in that place, I escape reality, and I can, meditate on kindness and joy and gratitude and then put myself back into the world a little calmer.
Yeah.
Gratitude, right? Gratitude is huge. If you are capable of just stepping aside from the moment, from the dark thoughts, from the comparing, from the bringing yourself down, and if you have to force yourself, take a pen and write it down. Gratitude helps you get outside of that cycle. So all of those things in some form of combination, however we are allotted to implement them into our lives, are what are going to reset that mind and bring us back to the change that we want to create.
There's so much that I'm learning from this interview that I'm excited to share with other people, because it takes work to really figure out what's going to help us stay on track. And it takes work too, like you mentioned, like sometimes it's crying. Sometimes crying for some people, even though it's what they need, they also may not accept it because of what they believe about crying, what that means, right? Like, it could mean I'm weak, or it could mean that I'm not strong, or that I'm not worthy, or it could mean a lot of things. And so you just sharing what it takes for you to be like to escape burnout, or even just the meditation of how to get and recenter and refocus, I believe is going to help a lot of people.
If I may just mention one more thing, because I find it fascinating that you started to talk about crying a couple of days ago. Like I said, I'm going through a season of darkness, and I hide in my closet and I cry. And sometimes I can cry for an hour, and sometimes I will take a cloth and put it over my face so that nobody hears me cry. And I'm almost screaming, but listen, at the end of it gets better. The kind of calm that I experience, medicine can't give you. But this on Tuesday, I had one of those moments where I'm not locked, but closed 3 doors behind me to find a closet away from everybody. And I stayed in the closet and I started to cry. And I want to cry alone. I don't want to cry with anybody else, but my husband followed me. And he followed me, and he sits next to me as I'm crying. I said, please go away. I just want to be alone. I want to cry because of the shame and the burden. I don't want to burden you. I'm ashamed that I'm crying. Right. Well, my daughter ended up making it into the bedroom next to the closet that I was in. And I said, go check on her, make sure that, she's okay. And so he goes out there, and she comes into the closet. And he must have told her to go hug your mom. And so she sits there and she's confused. She's like, why? She's 11. Why are you crying? What can I do better? And it was a very difficult moment. But in that moment, I told her, I said, Allie, this is what depression looks like. I have a great life. I have you. And my brain is telling me that I'm sad. And I never want my daughter to be a parent to me. I don't want her to look at me and see me cry and say, I have to take care of my mom. I have to grow up faster because my mom is not okay and I have to take care of her. But at the same time, I want her to grow up seeing that she can cry. My mistake was that I closed myself in the closet. And as much as I can sit here and preach, we all need to cry in front of one another. I can't make it out of the closet, not yet. I just want to cry in the closet. But so crying is huge. It is such an incredible way to close the cycle of healing. And if we don't teach our kids that, and if they suppress those tears, how are they going to heal? It's like having a lid on top of boiling water, right? You got to open it up, or you got to do, so you decrease the heat, then you got to open it up. You got to let it out.
Yeah.
So thank you for talking about crying.
Thank you for talking about crying. You brought that up. How has coaching changed your experience, like this journey that you've been on? Can you talk to us about how you felt going to work every single day, and then the change that you went through, and now what it's like for you going to work every day through this entire journey?
I can't wait to get out of bed. 6 a.m. I am up. I want to be up. I can't wait. I've got, hard days. I've got dark days, but most of the time I am excited to live life. And the reason why I'm excited to live life is because I have discovered who I am, and I am living that out. I am living out who I am, what I love. It comes from my soul and it comes from my heart. And I don't know that I would have discovered it very easily had it not been working with a life coach. I almost wish that there was a different term than a life coach, because I don't think it appropriately describes really what that person is. I don't know, like whatever you believe in the universe, but almost like an angelic energy, a guide, right? I think a guide is a better term, at least for the relationship that I have with my coach. They know how to guide your self-questioning, right? So you will get to a point where you, for example, have, defined what your values are, what's true within your heart, what is black and white to you, and what are the non-negotiables, right? But then what do you do with that? So they are able to guide you in your growth. So it happens faster. Doesn't mean that it's any easier. But I feel that it's like having a study guide prior to a test and living out your life. My life coach has been indispensable to my growth and to my joy. The cost, how much are you willing to pay to want to get out of bed every morning? Like, how many? I would give out all of my purses, all of my shoes, take them all away, as long as I would know that I will wake up with a smile on my face in the morning. It's worth it.
Yeah. Oh man, that is wonderful. I'm just smiling ear to ear because I know Lonnie, and so she is amazing. And she is angelic.
She totally is.
Yeah, she totally is. She totally is. What's your advice to people who are on the other side of it, that have someone in their life that may be going through the things that you've been going through and this journey you've been going through, especially when you're having a bad day? I think for people who don't understand mental illness or the challenges around it, they don't always know how to support and how to help. Like, we don't have necessarily like a playbook on what to do. So we might default to what we think is the best way to serve and help someone. Do you have any advice or insights for people who have someone in their life that they want to do a better job of supporting?
If it's really dangerous, seek medical help, call 911, all of those things. Encourage them to seek help. A lot of people that are depressed really, even if they choose not to take medicine, they may need someone to talk to. So we've got to talk about making sure that there's professional help to support you. But some of the things that I have found don't work are things like, you should be grateful. Saying things like that. Well, you should look at your life, you should be grateful. Or saying to someone, well, look at your life. My life is much more of a mess than your life, and I'm okay. Right? So statements like that, they don't help, because you know what? In the darkness, you know all that already. You have a good life. You know that somebody else's life is worse, but you still have the darkness. So it doesn't help. Like, no matter what you say to me about something else or someone else, it's not going to help me heal. Just making sure that the person knows that they're loved. I believe in sending energy. I believe in sending good thoughts that way. I do think that helps. Whatever you believe in, praying for them. But for me, sending a text message every day, how are you doing? I'm thinking about you. Nothing else. I'm thinking about you. attempting to spend time with them. These people are open to spending time with you, lending an open ear, just allowing yourself to be present and to be of support to that person. Beyond that, I honestly don't know, because I'm always on the other side. It's a better question for my husband, and I honestly don't know how he does it. I don't know how he finds the strength to continue to support someone with mental illness.
What has he done that you really appreciate?
Dude, he's my rock. Like the bracelet that I just told you about, he loves me until I'm me again. He's just always there. And he doesn't back down. And he's seen all of these dark things that nobody else has seen. Like the things that my husband has seen and been present for as a result of my mental illness, nobody in the world has seen. And he is still there. And I don't know why he's still there, but he's still there. And he, on a daily basis, makes me feel like I am loved, like I matter, like I am important, like there's a reason, like the world would be different without me. Like if I wasn't here, something would be missing.
When did you start writing?
I was in an honors program in school and in college, and third semester of college, I was put on academic probation because I was getting, below a B in my humanities courses for writing. And so in being part of my academic probation was that I needed to start seeing someone to learn how to write. And so every Tuesday from 10 to 11:30, I would go to a resource center and I would work with a professor to learn how to write. And I did that for an entire semester. The following year, I had a friend who attempted suicide, and I had another friend that called him a coward. Now, during that time, I myself was contemplating suicide. And I don't know if you know, but suicides occur in clusters. So when someone attempts or commits suicide, another person's more likely to attempt because all of a sudden they feel more brave to follow through on their thoughts. So here he was, attempted suicide. Here I was thinking about suicide daily. And here's this other person who was a really good friend of mine who called him a coward. And I didn't know how to deal with all that. I ended up writing an article and I submitted it to, and the article was kind of like a response to her calling him a coward.
Yeah.
And how you have no idea what it's like to battle your own mind telling you to self-destruct. Like you just can't imagine that. You yourself you're fighting yourself. And so that article ended up being published, and they ended up submitting it, and it won second place in some sort of a paper competition. So that's how my writing started. And then I wrote here and there and got some things published in dental magazines or in dental journals. And then 2 years ago, when I started working with Lonnie, I wrote an article because that's where I was. I wrote I wrote something out as a way of healing and processing that was called "Dentistry Made Me Hate People." And a friend connected me with an editor at this dental magazine, and they ended up publishing the article. And the article, I think, up to date has like 20,000 views, right? And so, because how many people are willing to admit that dentistry makes them hate people? You're not supposed to say that, right? So it was kind of a taboo subject, but anytime I needed to process something, I started writing, and they started taking it and they started publishing it. And then I, wrote something else and sent it to a blog, a women dentist entrepreneur, or a dental entrepreneur woman blog. And then some of these things started to circulate and people started to connect to it. I've had probably, close to 40 publications in the last 2 years. And I can't stop. It is my purpose. It truly is my purpose to allow people to see the things that they're trying to suppress, and to connect us all together, and to make the people that are reading it feel less alone. Chances are that whatever I'm feeling, there's someone out there that is feeling it. But what's been surprising to see is how many of us feel the same thing that we're unwilling to admit, because we think we're the only ones. You know, like even when I was suffering from depression in the 90s, it was huge taboo. And part of the reason why I'm speaking out in writing has to do with the fact that when I came back after my hospitalization, the halls were lined with people that did not want to even walk next to me, because I was a leper. I was psycho. I was, and when I walked back to school, that moment made me commit to the fact that somewhere, somehow in my life, I will prevent someone from feeling this alone.
That's so amazing. And I've read the article from the DO, Dentistry Entrepreneurial Women. Is that the acronym?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And when I talk with people about purpose, I often talk about like, who do you want to be a hero to? But even more than that is who wins when you win and who loses when you lose. And there are millions of people who win when you win, just by you sharing your story and by writing about it and being on the podcast. If you had one opportunity, let's say that you're going to teach a class, and this is the only class you're going to teach. And the millions of people who will win when you win, or will be happy when you're happy, or who will have a better day after a long cry, after you've had a long cry. They had an opportunity to hear a piece of advice from you for the last time. What would you say?
It's a very intense question. The higher the price you pay for surviving the trauma that life gives you, the more you walk through fire, the higher the joys, the more resilience you grow, the stronger you grow, the more you are capable of recognizing the small joys that everybody misses, and the more they add up. When you're in your dark moments and all of a sudden you come out of it and you are grateful for putting on shoes and walking outside and seeing the trees, those are things that the rest of us miss. But when you take those joys and you add them all up together, wow. They say smell the roses, stop and smell the roses. I don't know how many people actually do that. I do. I close my eyes, I shove my nose into the rose, and I just smell it for 5 seconds, and it is bliss. Right? But how simple is that?
Yeah.
But I know to do that because I've come from a place where I have felt there was nothing. There is reward in getting through it, even if it is to say that you are going to be stronger to deal with the next difficult moment. I can't begin to tell you the honor that I feel that the universe has bestowed upon me to be an instrument of the energy to say something that people find worth hearing. It is the greatest honor of my life, aside from motherhood, is to be present with someone like you and to have someone hear what I'm saying. I've had a person about 2 years ago tell me, if you start talking about this, your career will tank. because nobody wants to know that their dentist is depressed. I wanted to do I was part of a study club for 10 years, and I wanted to do a presentation for my study club after 10 years. And the director of the club said, "You don't have anything worth saying. We would like to have quality speakers, and nothing you say would be relevant or of good enough caliber for us to present it to these members, to these people that I have been a part of the community for 10 years." And that was really, really hurtful. And so to stand here and to talk to people, and for someone like you to say that my message is worth hearing, it brings everything full circle. It's like the crying does, right?
Yep. And I think that the reality of it is probably that person was probably wanting to hide something, right? They didn't want to hear it because they were not ready, or they didn't think they were ready. But I hope that they listen in and get to the place that you're encouraging our listeners to get to, which is one of learning how to love yourself, pressing through the difficulty, finding that one person that can hold your hand through the process, learning how to have a good cry, right? Learning how to stop and smell the roses, actually, instead of trying to become more authentic in a way that has nothing to do with truly living who they're supposed to be, but trying to please their neighbor, right? And so I appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. What's the best way for people to follow you if they want to learn more about your story and hear more about what you're up to?
You can friend me on Facebook, Maggie Augustyn, or you can always email me, maggie.augustyn@gmail.com. And I'm always free to have a conversation. I talk to people from across the country almost weekly, sharing and connecting. And the community of people that I've created for myself, that we've created together, it just it feels so good to have.
Awesome. Well, I will share all your contact information in the show notes, and we'll make sure that we publish that very, very soon so the world can hear your story. And I promise to never stop sharing it. So
thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's a true honor. Thank you.
Yep. You got it. Have a good rest of your day. Okay.
You too.
All right.